Hey guys, before this video starts, I just wanted to let everybody know that I have a community tab on my channel where subscribers can go and post about their strange encounters or spooky experiences, as well as a social space for all of us to hang out and interact with each other. So if you don't want to get off of YouTube and type me a whole email, feel free to use the community tab to share your stories. Now the first story was submitted to me by a viewer about a week ago, and I know you guys will enjoy it. And the other ones are stories that I've decided to remix and remaster, as well as added my own personal experiences that I've encountered very similar to the stories that I have read. So I hope you guys enjoy. Thank you for listening. My family and I moved to Alaska in 2009. We moved into a trailer park that is located in the Diamond Trailer Courts. Those who live in Alaska will know exactly where the area is. Anyways, for the first night, all of my siblings slept next to each other, and we all lined up from oldest to youngest. My twin sister was scared to sleep next to the front door. Our living room in the trailer was very small, and in front of the front door is another doorway entry that leads to the kitchen and other rooms. Since my twin sister was scared to sleep by the door, I optioned to sleep there in her place. Later that night, everybody was asleep, but I woke up all of a sudden. The kitchen lights were on since our other siblings were scared too. However, right in front of the doorway entry of the kitchen, I saw a tall woman. I wasn't sure if what I was seeing was right since I have terrible vision. I thought that maybe it could be the coats and boxes that my parents put in that area. Stupidly, I stood up and slowly got out of bed to get a closer look at the tall woman. I wanted to see if it was a blanket or a coat making the shape of a person, but I got scared just in case that it was a woman after all. Since the trailer was small, between the front door and the entryway of the kitchen, she was no more than 7 to 8 feet away. I closed my eyes and kept staring at her, hoping she would disappear or come closer. She did not. I tried to wake up my twin sister next to me, but she wouldn't wake up. So I got out of bed to sleep with my parents, who had an air mattress, and I told them that I was scared and if I could sleep with them. My mom was annoyed and scooted over for me to sleep in the middle of them. Just as I was getting comfortable, I felt like something dipped at the end of the bed near my feet. It felt like 2 hands were pushing down. I was so scared but looked down at my feet, expecting to see her, but I didn't see anybody. My mom got annoyed with me and pushed my head down onto the pillow. I was so scared and somehow I fell asleep. The next morning I told everybody and nobody believed me. We lived there for about 10 years and all of my siblings have their own stories. Eventually, my family and I moved out of the trailer court and into an actual big house in 2021. By then, most of my sisters and brothers were already married and had moved out of state. I had already moved out to live with my boyfriend, and one day, I came home early at around 12 p.m. and saw my dad's car out front. My dad gets off work at around that time and usually cooks for himself or for the family. When I got inside the house, I went upstairs to where my bedroom was, which was down a hallway. I went in there to grab a few things I had forgotten, and when I left my room, I could hear the cabinets that store the pots and pans open and close hard, and then the kitchen sink turned on too. I assumed that it was my dad in the kitchen, and I was contemplating to see what he was doing. But I assumed that he was cooking like he usually does, so I decided against going into the kitchen and went downstairs to see if my mom was home. Going down the stairs, you can see my older brother's room, and it was empty, so I know he wasn't in the kitchen. And when I walked closer to my parents' room, I could hear people laughing and decided to surprise my mom. But I was surprised to see my dad just scrolling through his Facebook. I was puzzled and asked if mom was home, and he said no. That then got me thinking of who was up there if it was only my dad home. I left my keys and bags upstairs and had to go back up there to get it. I was anxious. I grabbed my stuff and looked around in the kitchen, and I didn't see anybody. However, I did see that the cabinet that stored the pots and pans, it was open slightly. When I left back to go home to my boyfriend's house, I was in the middle of starting to cook, and where I was positioned, I could see the front door. All of a sudden, I can hear my front door handle turning, almost as if someone was trying to push it open. I thankfully locked the door when I got home, and it freaked me out. I carefully walked towards the door because besides the door are two long glass panels that are blurry so people can't see from the outside. I was at the stairs and I looked to the side of the glass panels, and if there was a person standing there, I could see their shadow, but this time I didn't see anything. I got more freaked out and pretended that nothing happened. I did tell my older sister and my mom about it, and they warned me that it was probably just my ancestor telling me to go back home, and I think so too. I live with my boyfriend at this house. There are a few times he has told me that I have scared him to the point of closing his doors when he's playing games late at night. One night, he said he was leaving the bathroom in our bedroom and he was looking at the light switch to turn it off. But before he could flip off the switch, he said he stopped because I was staring wide-eyed at him. He said he called out to me and asked if I was okay and if I was awake. Seeing that I didn't respond back to him, he flipped the switch off and quickly flipped it back on to see if my eyes were still open, and apparently they were. He said he slowly got out of there and had to watch his back as he was scared I was going to attack him while he was watching me as he left the room. He said that my eyes followed him out the room. I remember this vaguely because in the past, I've told him to stop opening the bathroom door too big because the bathroom lights kept waking me up. I got really mad this one night and I did feel my eyes open. I was so mad, but I was in a dreamlike state too, so I don't remember all of it. I woke up the next morning thinking that it was possibly a dream. Another time, he was gaming late at night, 1 to 5 a.m. in the morning, and he keeps the kitchen stove lights on at all times since it gets really dark inside of his house. While he was gaming, he went into the kitchen to grab himself a drink and he thought he felt eyes staring at him. So he looked up at the stairs and saw me standing there, watching him. He was scared and didn't say anything to me and just finished making his drink and went back into his room, and then he closed his doors. He said that after his game had ended, he looked back at the door and he saw my shadow underneath the door. He then got even more scared and kept watching my shadow to see when I would go back. Apparently, I eventually did. He said that I turned and went back upstairs. My boyfriend works with my sister-in-law, and when he went back to work the next day, he asked her if she knew that I sleepwalked. She said that I didn't and no, and he began to tell her of all the accounts that have been happening. My sister-in-law eventually asked my older sister, who she's engaged to, and my sister says that I don't sleepwalk. Okay, I'm not saying that there's ghosts, but I'm saying that there's ghosts, alright? So thank you to the viewer that submitted the story. I think you need to do a jingle bell or, get some sort of reading done on you because that's pretty weird. That's pretty freaky. Like if my wife was doing that to me in the middle of the night and she was just standing there staring at me, I'd probably Wing Chun her. I'd probably I'd no shadow kick her, Just kidding. If my wife is listening to this story, I'm just kidding. Please don't. My mom told me this ghost story after she heard it on the Hmong radio a while back. This story took place in Fresno, California. A small group of Hmong ladies went to the Mountain View Cemetery, also known to the OGs as Belmont Cemetery. When they got to the gravesite, one of the ladies placed a bowl of food next to the grave of her child. As she did that, a stray, dirty cat came out of nowhere and began eating the food. The mother picked up a rock and threw it at the cat, hitting it as it ran into the bushes. When they were done, the mother told her child that they would come back and visit again. She then said, "Let's go. It's time to go home now." As soon as they got into the car, they began to smell rotting flesh, and somehow the car had become very heavy, almost as if a bunch of people were piled onto the car. But how can that be when there were only 3 of them? The car wasn't this heavy when they first arrived there, and where was this strange smell coming from? The ladies all got out of the car and checked around the premises. Maybe they hit something that died on the road, but nothing turned up. They all got back into the car, and the mother thought about the cat from earlier. Maybe it was a ghost cat. Perhaps it was angry that they didn't leave it any food, so now it decided to follow them. She didn't say a word to the other 2 ladies yet. By now, they had already realized what was going on, and so the mother then announced out loud, "Hey, let's all go to the buffet. They're having a buffet today." My mom told me that the dead refer to funerals as buffets, while us living people call it funerals. The lady then said out loud again, "Hey, I bet there'll be a lot of food there, so we can all each have our own fill." Luckily for them, there was a funeral going on that weekend, so they all drove to that place. When they arrived, the mother then said, "Okay, we're here now. Let's go inside and eat." The ladies went inside the funeral for a little bit, and then met up back again at the car and took off. When they drove off, the smell of rotting flesh and the heaviness of the car completely disappeared. And ever since then, whenever the mother would visit the cemetery, she would throw food on the ground and say, "This is for you guys to share, so don't eat my child's food." And since then, she hasn't had a single problem with rotting flesh or a heavy carload. Hey, all I'm saying is, don't be throwing rocks at cats. Who is calling me? Sorry guys, that was my uncle. He was FaceTiming me through Messenger, and he was just showing me how much fun he was having with all the family and cousins, and telling me that I was missing out. And they were trying to make me drink, and they were holding one of those tiny bottles of Corona. Now Hmong people have been liking those tiny little bottles of Corona because it's easy to slam, It's not like the normal Corona bottle, but it's like the tiny little ones. And he's like, "Hey, you gonna drink with us?" And I told him that I don't got beer in the house. I told him that I wasn't as much of an alcoholic as they were. Anyways, lesson is don't throw rocks at cats. And I guess if you start to have problems with entities and ghosts following you, maybe like in this story, you can be like that Hmong lady that decides to go to a funeral to drop off all those spirits, because now it's not your problem no more. It's like their problem. Just don't get it confused with an actual buffet. Okay, I'm thinking imagine if it was me in that situation. I'm like, "Hey, let's go to the buffet." I actually might think we're going to a buffet, and we might go to this Chinese buffet where they're playing some Chinese music and stuff. And I'd be like, "Hey, table for 3? Yep, I just want to order some water. My buddy will order some tea, and he needs to lay off the soda, so get him a Diet Coke." And then we'll just go and start scooping out some sesame chicken and General Tso's and all that stuff. Might forget all about that trick, but yeah, very, very good, very interesting story. My mom became a shaman last year, and right afterwards, she dreamt of my cousin, who had been deceased for about 5 years now. She would cry to my mom and say that she's being punished for the suga. My mom warned my uncle that their daughter wasn't happy and that she was very sad, but their family didn't listen. Around that time, my uncle's kids would experience strange phenomenons around their house. One time, my cousin Shing was on the bed talking on her phone, when all of a sudden, she saw a dark figure run by her bed and go underneath. She got really scared and ran outside. Our younger brother, Chimeng, keeps hearing heavy breathing near him whenever he's asleep. The oldest brother, who has a wife and kids, keeps on having bad dreams. His 2-year-old daughter would get up in the middle of the night and run outside of the bedroom, giggling and playing with somebody. Finally, my uncle realized all of this and got worried and decided to uneng for the family. They invited my mom's Sifu to perform the ritual. My mom's master asked her to go watch and learn. The thing about my mom is that her koneng not only allows her to do the oneng stuff, but also allows her to talk to the dead. Sometimes the dead can even talk to her as well. While her master was performing, all of a sudden, my mom just closes her eyes and groans. My sisters and I were there, and we became afraid and didn't understand what was going on. I asked my mom what was wrong, and she just shook her head and said that she wanted some rest. So we took her to sleep in Sheng's room. I was worried about my mom, so my sisters and I sat on the ground at the foot of the bed where my mom was laying down and played some cards. We were laughing and talking when all of a sudden, my mom wakes up with her eyes closed shut and tears streaming down her face. I could feel the atmosphere changing. The room was very cold now. Then my mom spoke and said, "Go tell my mom to come here." At that moment, I knew my mom was no longer here, and whoever was here was most likely my deceased cousin. I ran quickly out of the room, gathered her family into the room with my mom. My mom, who was now possessed by my dead cousin, cried and told my auntie how much she had loved her, and how she would always go with her to work and make sure she comes home safely. She also said that she didn't mean to scare her siblings, but only wanted to tell them that she loved them and missed them. Then she turned to her dad and yelled at him, saying that it was his fault that she had died, that he better love her mom and her siblings. She kept crying, and everybody was becoming afraid. My mom's Sifu stopped her ceremony and tried to get my deceased cousin out of my mom. The master had finally sent her spirit away, and after that, my mom slumped down and passed out for a good 2 hours or so. Ever since then, my mom tries really hard not to let anyone take control of her body anymore, because they say it's not good to let the dead do that to the living. About 3 weeks ago, my grandfather had passed away, and at the funeral home, my mom's face became pale. She was groaning the way she did at my cousin's house. She walked out of the funeral home, and later on, she told us that Grandpa wanted to speak with us. That story was pretty good. I also have a story, personal story actually, that is pretty similar to the story that you guys had just listened to before. So apologize if this seems like I'm just rambling, but I hope you guys enjoy. Anyways, basically I had this aunt who my uncle married, and when we did my grandma's funeral, my mom's funeral, they came to support us, and I was very happy that they showed up and decided to stay. But that whole day, my uncle kept telling me that he can't stay past a certain time. It was probably like maybe 6 or 7 p.m. And that's when it started to get kind of dark around that time. And I was like, well, I don't know what's going on. I wanted to kick it with him a little bit more, because we were going to go kick it in the back and like drink beer and, play cards and stuff. But he's like, oh, son, I gotta go. We gotta go. You're, auntie and I, we gotta go. Eventually, my auntie just decided to go by herself back to their hotel that they stayed at for that weekend. And then later, I had to drive my uncle. My uncle comes up to me. It was probably like way past 6 and 7 o'clock. It was probably 11 or 12, close to midnight. There were still a lot of people there. And then, I was driving him. I was like, oh, how come you guys wanted to leave so early? You guys had just gotten there. And he says, well, your auntie, whenever she goes to funeral homes and stuff like that, she gets possessed by the deceased. I was like, whoa, really? He says, yeah, she went to go see a couple of shamans, and the shamans told her that she has konang, and because of that, she kind of has to avoid funerals. Otherwise, the deceased will come and possess her and start talking through her. I'm like, whoa, that's legit? You've seen it before? He says, yeah, my own father-in-law, when my father-in-law passed away, your auntie and I went, and in the middle of the funeral, your auntie just like became possessed by his spirit, and he just started talking through her and started talking all these things and whatever was going on. And the whole time, keep in mind, I'm just driving him to his hotel. I'm like, dang, this is some crazy stuff, this is legit. And so my uncle is like, yeah, so every now and then when it gets dark, right when the sun goes down, we have to leave. Otherwise, your auntie is going to get possessed. And then, one thing about that funeral is, my grandma who passed away also had a lot of, let's say unfulfilled promises, or not unfulfilled promises, but, she had things that she wanted to do in life, right? And things that she wanted to say. So it would have been a really bad combo. There's a bit of some family drama in that family too, which, I won't I won't show too much about, but yeah, I'm just thinking like, man, if my auntie had gotten possessed by my deceased grandma, there would have been so much crazy stuff that went down. And me and my cousin would have been like, hey, no way, what the heck is going on? We probably would have just sat there and watched the whole drama show go down. But, God bless my grandma's soul. She was an angel. And, thank you to my uncle and auntie for showing up. But yeah, that's a little personal story I wanted to include in there.